comes after news emerged earlier today that Waltz and Deputy National Security Advisor Alex Wong were expected to both leave the administration. That was according to 3 sources with knowledge of their expected departures. You may recall that Waltz was at the center of that first Signal Group chat scandal back in March. He was the one who inadvertently, he said, added a journalist to a private and unsecured chat with other top administration officials. That chat discussed military strikes in Yemen. In a previous TV interview, Waltz had said that he took full responsibility for the incident. Let's bring in NBC News White House correspondent Yamiche Alcindor. So, Yamiche, this has been an interesting day, right? We thought from sources that Mike Waltz would be leaving the administration. Now the president is saying, I'm going to make him the UN ambassador, which seems like maybe it's a demotion. Tell us what this all means.
Well, this has really been one of those striking days in the Trump administration. We know that the president now is saying that he wants Michael Waltz to be the next UN ambassador. It is seen by experts as a bit of a demotion in that the UN ambassador is seen as maybe not as prominent a role. That being said, the president did have to not nominate. He had to pull a nomination of Elise Stefanik. He said because of the close House majority and the margin there. So as a result, he had to pull that nomination and is now putting Mike Waltz up for that job. I will say, though, that our sources have been telling us that the president was still privately very frustrated with the way that Signal chat situation happened, where, of course, the editor-in-chief of The Atlantic was inadvertently added to that Signal chat, talking about some war plans, some military strikes, rather, about the Houthis. So it'll be very interesting to see how this all happens and what the president says going forward.
Yamiche, we should note for our viewers, it sounds like there's a protest maybe going on behind you. That's the yelling that we're hearing. So Waltz would still need to be confirmed by the Senate, right, before becoming UN ambassador. Remind us about, you talked about Elise Stefanik, and she was pulled, so now he would go through that process.
That's right. Just to acknowledge, there is a lot of protests behind me. There's a large group protesting the president's immigration policies right outside the White House. That being said, as you said, Mike Waltz would need to be confirmed by the Senate. Now, our Capitol Hill sources and Capitol Hill colleagues tell me that he has a warm relationship with a lot of lawmakers, so he's seen as someone who could be confirmed into that job. That being said, Elise Stefanik was the president's choice for this job, but he pulled that because the House majority is just so thin of a margin, he said.
Yeah, and one last question, Yamiche. How hard would it be for Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, to also do the job of National Security Advisor? It sounds like 2 big jobs.
It's a key question. These are 2 huge jobs, so it's going to be very interesting to see how Marco Rubio juggles this and for how long he juggles this, because the big question is, are we going to get a new National Security Advisor? That's something we'll definitely be watching, Kate.
All right, Yamiche Alcindor, covering the White House for us. Yamiche, thank you. The Chamber of Commerce, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, issuing a warning about President Trump's tariffs, saying they could do, quote, irreparable harm to small businesses. The business lobbying group sent a letter to the Trump administration. It says, while it supports the president's policy goals and wants to work together to avoid a recession, it is calling for some exemptions, saying small businesses need immediate relief from tariffs. On Capitol Hill, a bipartisan push to undo the Trump administration's sweeping global tariffs failed in the Senate last night by just 1 vote. Vice President J.D. Vance cast the tie-breaking vote there to sink that resolution. Let's bring in NBC News senior business correspondent Christine Romans, who's with us on set. Christine, good to see you. So what exactly does the Chamber of Commerce want to see the Trump administration do, and how much influence do they have?
They'd like to see some exemptions for small businesses, for Main Street. I mean, the president and CEO of this organization said that, Main Street small businesses don't have K Street lobbyists and big fancy lawyers to help try to get them exemptions or change the president's tariffs. And so she was speaking on their behalf. And what they really want is exemptions for small businesses while the president and his team are negotiating these trade deals, especially for things that aren't even made in the United States that so many of these companies need. Listen.
I think we can build more here and grow more here. But when you have tariffs on things that we don't even grow here, like bananas and coffee, or when you have tariffs on businesses that lead to layoffs, they need immediate relief, or they need an exemption process that lets them figure out time to plan a supply chain, to have certainty.
for some of these retailers that have been ordering goods, right, for store shelves for Mother's Day, for 4th of July, for back to school, for Christmas. I mean, they're looking at 145% tariffs on Chinese-made goods in particular. That's an existential threat for some companies.
Separate question. A lot of companies today, big companies, put out sort of their first quarter results, right? And McDonald's is getting a lot of attention. Why?
Yeah, because traffic sales fell at McDonald's 3.6%, and that's the biggest decline in sales since the pandemic. And when you look at low income diners there, almost a double-digit decline, and middle income diners too. So this shows a caution among consumers. They're seeing the stock market, they're listening to the trade war rhetoric, and they're pulling back and getting more cautious with their money.
Yeah, just not going to go through the drive-through as many times. Christine Romans, thank you.